shim shim and that Lindy hop away. There's a brand new rhythm that's the top today. I'll bet it's even tops way up on Mars. 100 million people give it 48 stars. Because the birds in the trees, they're all singing. Even the breeze seems to say, you better get hip and jive and do a rhythm that's red and white and blue. The future may hold lots of changes. Things will grow old, still I say the music forever will be new, while the rhythm is red and white and blue.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. This week, golden ripe whole pineapples, 2 for $5. You can pair that with a Brave Heart T-bone steak on sale this week for $9.99. Now we're talking everything you need and more. Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. I'd like to welcome Mr. Ford O'Connell, political analyst, attorney, multimedia commentator, businessman. You can find him at FordO'Connell.com, and pretty much anywhere there's conservative news, you'll see Mr. Ford. Check him out on Twitter, or X now, it's X. Welcome to Cracker Culture. I am Smoking Joe. Now, Ford, as an American, is hard to decipher between disrespect or dementia from our current seat holder of the White House. Biden's actions at the celebration for the Medal of Honor recipient, Ford, is just an absolute lack of concern for protocol, or his mental decline progressed to a point where he simply, the simplest task, he can't compete no more. I'll show you a video and you tell me, Ford, I just don't understand it. Now, Ford, I looked at that poor, the recipient of the Medal of Honor looked like, what the hell just happened here? That was totally odd, and I don't believe that he was just being disrespectful. I just believe he's checked out.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Joe Biden in that moment was oblivious and unempathetic. He walked out of that ceremony like his administration has walked out on America. The man cannot trip without falling. He can't complete a sentence, and he certainly can't serve another 4 years in the White House.
Well, Ford, I guess I have a lot of concern. Now, we just seen Feinstein. She had her medical issue. We got Mitch McConnell, who is just totally going absent on several occasions. Does it not time not only for term limits, but is it not time for there have to be a little bit more on the cognitive issues in our politics?
Well, we certainly need term limits. Remember, we're also forgetting about Mitch McConnell here, who's the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. And in 2024, we need a strong leader who has America First issues at play in the United States Senate. I think even Mitch McConnell needs to step down from leadership in the United States Senate and promote someone with America First values who can fight. Because remember, we're going to have a lot of legislative fights before the 2024 election where the Democrats are going to try to pull tricks and use that as election issues in 2024. And you can't have someone who's asleep at the wheel for whatever reason, fair or foul, who's asleep at the wheel, quarterbacking the Republicans in the United States Senate.
Well, in light of the last little situation with Mitch, his camp come out and said that Mitch said he was going to finish his the whole term. He wouldn't be out until 2026.
He can finish his term. I'm just advocating that he step down from leadership. He can still be in the United States Senate. Remember, he makes all of the logistical calls for the Republicans in the United States Senate, and it's very, very important that we have someone there who's got it, who's fine health-wise and can push the metal against the Democrats, because there is a lot of games in the United States Senate that most people really don't know a lot about.
Well, and I think that most people don't know a lot about what's going on at all, because when you look at these guys, Mitch McConnell, you look at Joe Biden, there's people that are dealing with this on more than what we're seeing, because you can tell by their interaction with these men, because they know exactly where to be, where to stand, what to say to keep them on a level field. Like Mitch, he was stood right there, and the lady, she was like, all right, and answered the questions and said a little louder, please, like nothing happened.
Well, Mitch's staff is a little bit better at dealing with Mitch than Joe Biden's staff is with Joe Biden. And I mean, the situation with Dianne Feinstein in California is absolutely atrocious. I mean, she had to be told on the Senate floor how to vote on some very key legislation. She's going to end her career coming up in this next election. But I think, look, if you want to, I'm always cautious about ageism. Here's the deal. Get the term limits in, and you won't have to worry about the ageism issue as much.
Well, I think that you get to a certain age where even though you've got the expertise, you become more of a consultant role person than you are a leadership role. And I think that that's the problem. Some of these people might be great consultants to other people to help them lead, but as far as being leaders, they're making us all look pretty bad right now.
I think that's absolutely right. And if you are watching abroad, you have to be sort of laughing when you're looking at the leaders in American federal politics, and their combined age seems to be older than the sport of baseball.
Well, let's keep talking about Biden, because this is just unbelievable. The Washington State Journal come out with a poll that showed Trump and Joe Biden neck to neck in the polls. What does that mean for Trump?
It's great news for Trump, and the reason is very simple. When you look at the issues that are bedeviling Biden going into the 2024 election, two things stand out, and that is his age. Basically, more than 70% of registered voters say that Joe Biden is not fit to serve another 4 more years in office. Not only that, you have almost 2/3 of Democrats saying the exact same thing. And the other thing that we're seeing here is that the top issue outside of Biden's age is inflation, the cost of everything rising in the borders. Those are certainly Republican strengths. And also, one thing that most people don't see is that in this poll, 51% of people said that Donald Trump has a record of accomplishment, while only 40% said Joe Biden had the same thing, and only 28% of the registered voters believe that the economy is getting better. Bidenomics is broken. The American people are waking up. I can't remember a time, if we go back to 2020, in a national poll where Donald Trump was either tied or leading Joe Biden. And we are months out from this election, and already Donald Trump is either tied or leading. Frankly, in the latest CNN poll, CNN, let me say that again, Donald Trump is up by 1 point on Joe Biden in a CNN poll.
Let you comment after you see this.
New polling shows a rematch between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump is growing increasingly likely. The same poll suggests a majority of voters also believe President Biden, who turns 81 in November, is too old for another 4 years in the White House.
Someone said, that Biden, he's getting old, man. The only thing that comes with age is a little bit of wisdom. I've been doing this longer than anybody, and I guess
comments like this one from President Biden continue to echo a question many Americans are asking. Is he too old for another term in the White House? A new Wall Street Journal poll reveals 73% of voters say yes.
The man should be in a nursing home. He should be being cared for by family that loves him instead of being paraded around like he is.
What this president brings to this administration is wisdom and experience.
The president, who turns 81 in November, is only 3 years older than former President Trump, who fared slightly better in the poll, with 47% saying his age is an issue. The same poll suggests a 2020 rematch of Biden versus Trump and shows a dead heat at 46% for each candidate if the general election was held today.
Both parties seem to be sticking their fingers in the air saying, nah, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. And so the Democrats are convinced that Trump is so unpopular he can't win. Republicans are convinced Biden is so unpopular and so old he can't win.
Despite the poll, GOP candidates not named Trump are hoping voters are ready for a change.
At what point do they get it's time to leave? They need to let a younger generation take over.
Now, another 2020 flashback could be COVID. First Lady Jill Biden announced that she tested positive over the weekend. President Biden so far tested negative.
Well, Ford, going back to what we was talking about, age and everything else, it seems it's pretty much across the board politically, as well as anybody that actually follows anything to do with politics. We got to do something different.
Well, look, I think that Donald Trump's going to be the Republican presidential nominee. But remember, if the Democrats do something different, then Kamala Harris becomes the president of the United States. That's not exactly going to sell well with the American people. So remember, different can also be worse. But I hear exactly what you're saying. More and more people are waking up to the reality that there's no way Joe Biden can serve another 4 years. And I think Republicans will be wise to make the point that what Democrats are trying to do behind the scenes is get Joe Biden in office, and then after about a month, scoot him out and put somebody else in. You need to be aware that they're not really voting for Joe Biden going forward.
Well, and in that clip, there was a couple of things that was really, they talked about Jill Biden testing positive for COVID. Everybody that knows what's going on, they're fixing to try this again, trying to throw us against the COVID lockdown scenario again. Even the people in Atlanta, all the people in the other ethnicities are against Biden at this point. They're all praising Trump.
Well, you got a great point. The Democrats feel that the best way that they can improve politically is obviously to talk up COVID. And you're already seeing it in the Washington, D.C. area. You're seeing it in the California. And I know we're in Florida, and people say, well, in Florida, we're fine. Well, let me tell you something. This spreads like wildfire. When they start talking about a 10-day mask, here's what happens. When the government's power gets bigger, the individual loses, and the individual never gains those rights back. So if they slap on a 10-day mask like they're doing in Maryland right now in some of the schools, and then they say, well, after that, we'll look at it as 10-day optional. Fool me once, it ain't happening again. Okay?
Yeah, we played that road.
That's exactly right. And this stuff starts like, spreads like wildfire. Right now it's in Maryland. Right now it's in California in certain businesses. It won't be long till the Democrats are arguing that Republicans are killing people because they're not locking down and masking up. And yet we know that N95 masks don't work. Mask mandates do not work. Research shows that over and over. Even Dr. Fauci was forced to recently admit that, even though he tried to play some word games. And the other thing is lockdowns have destroyed this generation's children in terms of their economic learning, and it crushes business and our economy.
Well, I just can't believe that people would even attempt to fall for this yet another time. As much damage as it caused to our economy, as much damage as it done to our children, the emotional stability of everyone across the world. The suicide rates went up, everything because of this stupidity. I hope that people aren't that foolish again.
Unfortunately, I'd like to have that hope. Okay, but when you start talking about the third type of the fourth variant, and you're talking about overprotective parents and children who listen to teachers in government-run schools, they'll create an anxiety. And as Rand Paul has pointed out, less than a fraction of 1% during the original COVID of children under the age of 18 died as a result of COVID. Therefore, this is no different when it comes to children than dealing with the flu or the cough or something else. Stay the course. Let's not redo the same thing again, but the Democrats will be pushing for it.
Well, inside of this new, hopefully not so scary COVID outbreak, do you think that maybe Governor Ron DeSantis is about time for him to decide to shut it down and get back to governing Florida?
Well, I mean, look, it looks like, and we've said this for a long time now, that Donald Trump, barring a seismic event, is going to be the Republican presidential nominee. And Ron's campaign's having donor problems. It's having issues. And right now, Nikki Haley's catching up to him in second place, and he's still 30, 40, 50 points in some cases behind Ron DeSantis, behind Donald Trump. In our home state, he's something like 20, 30 points. And remember, in our home state, these are the people that know Ron DeSantis the best. And these are the people that also have a positive approval rating of Ron DeSantis. I think you're absolutely right. It is time to come home and fix the insurance issue and fix some of the problems we have. But here's the reason why I don't think Ron's going to do that necessarily. And that is because people are concerned that something might happen to Trump legally or otherwise, and they're going to try to burrow in for a nuclear winner. And if something does happen and he can't be the nominee for whatever reason, they want to slide right in there. So I think that's why I don't think you're going to see Ron come home.
Well, I want to talk a little about what they're doing with Trump, with all this craziness, but I want to bring up something that you're getting some word on, but the Biden camp ain't speaking on at all. And that's talks of his impeachment are finally up. And just show you how Biden feels about it, I got one little clip.
I don't. President Biden, you want to talk to me about
to Congress?
Do you want me? Let's talk about why I'm here.
He would not even address it.
Not only will he not address it, the Biden White House already has a war room set up with more than a dozen folks to basically push back. And right now in the House of Representatives, on the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, what is being debated is an impeachment inquiry. That is very different than an impeachment. What an impeachment inquiry does is it allows you to get at documents that you otherwise can't get through basic congressional means. And the reason why we're pursuing this impeachment inquiry is because the Biden White House has been stonewalling on those emails from the National Archives and his financial records. Look, the Democrats launched an impeachment inquiry against Trump with respect to his financial records. They won in court and it worked. And if Republicans have the backbone and they launch this impeachment inquiry, it will work. They'll get the necessary documents, and then we'll have the receipts about whether or not Biden's gotten direct benefits from Russia, Ukraine, China, etc. So that's what this is about. It's about getting the documents to make the case.
Well, now, I want to talk about the Democrats are beating to death this 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment they think is going to stop Trump from becoming a president or holding presidency. I've got a clip from I guess probably another, like a liberal site, but this is what they said about the 14th Amendment.
Former President Donald Trump is now facing federal charges related to his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And with this latest indictment comes questions about how these new charges could impact his run to reclaim the White House. Verify viewer David emailed us to ask if the 14th Amendment could potentially keep Trump from serving in office. Section 3 of the amendment is commonly known as the Insurrection Clause, and it gives Congress the power to ban public officials from holding office if they, quote, have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. Constitution. So let's verify. Does the Insurrection Clause of the 14th Amendment apply to former President Trump? Our sources are the 14th Amendment, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, and 2 constitutional law experts. This claim needs context. Our experts say it's an untested legal gray area. The clause has never been invoked for a president, and there are several things that would need to be clarified. First, the Supreme Court would need to rule on whether the clause can be applied to a president. Section 3 lists the public officials who can be banned from office if they engage in insurrection. Members of Congress, members of state legislatures, and officers of the United States are included. The president isn't, but could he be considered an officer? Some legal experts argue that Chief Justice Roberts said the answer is no when he issued an opinion in a different case in 2010. In that opinion, Roberts mentioned that officers of the United States are by definition appointed, not elected. But he didn't specifically say that means the president can't be considered an officer.
For purposes of Section 3 of Article 14, there is no certified answer by the United States Supreme Court for this question.
Second, the 14th Amendment doesn't say how whether someone engaged in insurrection is determined. In the past, criminal convictions, civil actions, and even acts of Congress have served as proof. So in theory, a judge or Congress would have to explicitly state that Trump is ineligible for office under the Insurrection Clause. And then the Supreme Court would have to uphold that decision. But even if that happens, another part of the amendment says Congress can exempt someone from disqualification and let them take office with a 2/3 vote of each house.
What is the real truth behind this whole crazy 14th Amendment?
Well, it's a Democrat fantasy, and it's probably the most dangerous legal theory I've heard pushed in decades. Let me respond to Casey Decker, who just did that clip. It's very simple. In the 91 charges against President Trump, he has neither been charged with insurrection or rebellion, nor has he been convicted of insurrection or rebellion. So the 14th Amendment doesn't even apply. And secondly, even if it did apply, okay, this is why it's not clear that it applies to the office of the presidency. So all of this is absolutely nonsense. But this is how Democrats rile up their base with dangerous conspiracy theories. Who's wearing the tinfoil hat now, and who's in the cult? Because when the Democrats talk about this, they're the ones in the cult, and they're the same people that are saying men can have babies, and you and I know male humans cannot have babies.
Well, and again, I don't think that the Democrats is looking at what their base is looking at. If you look at a lot of the people in the lower income communities who are the ones that are seeing all this mainly and getting poisoned, they're getting poisoned by a narrative that the Democrat left is pushing. But then when they see Trump, they see Trump's mugshot. That makes Trump relatable. They feel like that Trump ain't no longer the man. Trump's fighting the man along beside him.
There's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I believe there's a USA Today Suffolk poll out that talks about voters who are eligible to vote and don't vote, and people who rarely vote. And among those people, Trump has got like 2/3 of the voters. The question is going to be, again, like we see Byron Donalds talking about banking the vote. The question is going to make sure we get the ballots from those people and have them turned in. That is what ballot harvesting is. If they're not going to go to the polls, we need to be going to them.
Yeah, like I said, I just think that the Democrats, I don't know what their thought process is. They look bad. This makes it look worse, and their own people are seeing it, and they're wanting to say, no, not us. We're not taking part in this.
Well, they're straight up rigging the election, Joe. Let's just get right to the chase here. They're straight up rigging the elections with the indictments and with the news coverage of a 14th Amendment fantasy that doesn't exist, because you know what's going to happen here. This is why first they're going to try to keep Trump off the ballot. When that doesn't work, they're going to wind up saying when he beats Joe Biden, they're then going to say, well, the 14th, and we have to relook at the 14th Amendment. And here we go again. They're going to try to block the certification of elections, just like they've done every single time in the 21st century. And we're going to be at loggerheads again.
Well, again, and when was the last time the 14th Amendment was even applied? During the Civil War?
Yeah, I think it was like the 1860s, and I think it was applied to a New Mexico land commissioner, believe it or not.
Well, speaking of troubles all over, let's just jump down here to Lee County. Now, I've kind of watched what they do, and I err on caution when it comes to the Board of County Commissioners here in Lee County. Now, one thing they just recently done, they approved the expansion of the Emergency Operations Center. Now, when I first initially watched this emergency operation, and this is an expansion, not a rebuild. This is not a new building. This is an expansion. They were looking at a little over 19 million. So when it went before the vote this week, They approved the expansion at $28,699. So that's $28,699,000, up from a little over 19. That's where I question. I mean, what are we getting for that extra, almost double in price for a renovation or an expansion?
Well, I think that's a great question. And we talk about audits all the time. This is a great question right now because there have been issues about that have been in the media and elsewhere about how we've been spending our money in Lee County. And frankly, when you see something that's 19 million and now it's almost 29 million, you can't be saying, well, the cost of inflation went up. I mean, you're talking about a whole nother third in price here. Something seems a little fishy. Not alleging anything, but what I am saying is when you see that sort of difference, I think you're absolutely right. That should be looked at.
Well, and the reason I even brought this up is because the board went on, and I want to show you, I'm going to play a little clip here, and then we'll discuss what the board approved that's got me a little perplexed.
Why do we feel the need to follow the federal government when we're so much smaller than the federal government as far as their limit?
One other thing I think we're right on target here is because, houses that we were building for $200,000 just a year and a half ago are now $350,000. So the number is exactly, in my opinion, where it needs to be because that is how much things have gone up over the last few years, here in Lee County. So I don't think the 250 is extravagant at all. I think it's right on target.
I don't want to take a risk to ask somebody who's approving the award to necessarily make them upset and that be used against them for later in the procurement of different contracts. That's an optics, that's a perspective. My job is to tell you the what ifs, and it's the job of this board to say you're willing to accept those risks and pass the ordinance, and we'll do what we've always done, which is work together as a team to support the community of Lee County, knowing that this is a risk-filled environment, but that is ultimately this board's decision to make, not mine.
Let's just kind of break it down a little bit into plain English, I guess. So let's talk about can you quantify what risk we're taking on the increase from 100,000 to 250? Is the risk 150,000? What do you, when you talk about risk?
When it comes to county spending, I don't believe my office has a stronger relationship. That's a decision for this board and your county staff to do. So when it comes to the dollar amounts that they're spending, I don't particularly look at that as a risk from my office's perspective. I do think it creates a risk for you all because you're putting more trust in your county staff, but that doesn't really necessarily have a policy risk associated to it. Signature is that we didn't strengthen other internal controls to match that. And so that's where in the report, Mr. Winton said that, the conflict of interest statute. It does exist, and it is in place today, but there, in theory, this is not saying that it actually has happened or will happen, but in theory, there's nothing that stops a particular assistant county manager or department director from going to somewhere else and saying, hey, go get bids from these particular vendors.
So what they're talking about is they increased the signatory amount, the amount that had to be voted on, from $100,000 to $250,000 to $250,000. Now, what that is, if for people don't understand, that means they can go out and spend up to $250,000 with nobody have any say so over them before they spend it at all for it. That's a lot of chunk of change. I don't give a dang what Mike Greenwell thinks. That's a house in most places. You can go right off.
Yeah, they're making it rain, my friend, without actually having any oversight. And, I'm not going to put words in Kevin Corrin's mouth. I'm just going to repeat what he said. He said, we might not necessarily have the internal controls in place to make sure we're spending the money the best way possible. That is what I took away from what he's saying. I'm not trying to put words in Kevin Corrin's mouth, but if you listen to what he's saying you can do that. Can we guarantee that it's being spent the best way possible? That I don't know. That is beyond what you're asking me.
Well, I just think that $250,000 without
a lot of money to a lot of people.
A a lot of money to me, buddy. I mean, I don't know. It's a little, but the reason I played that clip, Kevin Carnes is visibly not wanting to tell them they're wrong, but you can see that he's a bit nervous with what they're doing.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was making, is that when it comes to what internal controls you have with respect to this, because, there are allegations that it's already the Wild West of spending in Lee County. And now you're basically saying that the Lee County commissioners can make decisions, or decisions can be made up to $250,000 without a vote. So potentially you're playing with fire, because the bad just could have gotten a lot worse.
Well, and I've been bringing up how we wanted a forensic audit. Now, the dog and pony show that armored persons and the school board tries to give to everybody, and now the Board of County Commissioners, they get audited. Yes, they get audited. They self-audit, and nobody seems to get that. And it's on their mind, and I'm going to play a clip. At the end, listen to what Pendergrass says, and that's very telling. Now, let's just watch this clip and see what we...
How many other audits do we go through here as a county?
You go through quite a few. We had 22 on the audit plan for this calendar year. I believe it's 22.
Okay. Just when people use words like internal controls and people use those loosely, I just want people to be aware of, you're cutting the checks. Okay, so unlike my company where I walk in accounts payable and say, cut a check, I sign it, it's out the door. You actually have separation between accounting and the clerk of court. So every check, you have adequate documentation and so on and so forth, you prepare. And then you also participate and assist in the audits that we do, and we go through various audits to obviously additional safeguards that are there. My questions today were more about just asking the origin so we understood it. By no means that I want anyone to feel that I'm not in favor of everything that's here. I think it's crystal clear that the constituents need to understand exactly that you cut our checks, okay, you're the safeguard, and you actually participate in at least 3 major audits that I'm aware of, certainly Clifford Lawson and Alan, but the different audits we go through.
Up on that question, how many material weaknesses and significant findings have you had through all those 22 audits? I mean, I can't recall any, but...
I haven't gone through all 22 from this calendar year or the past, but they're on the website, so you can go and read them. We do a really good job as a county having internal controls. I do think audits are misunderstood. We all know that there's a lot in the audit world these days, but that doesn't mean that we can't do better. And that's where these comments came from.
To share one final comment, obviously I'm a little sensitive about the audit question, right, in light of what this letter and things like that came out. And I'd love to just publicly respond that I have absolutely zero concerns that an audit could be done. Let's do the audit. No reticence, no hesitancy. Let's look at things. But the truth is we look at things multiple times every year. We already do the CAFR. We already do the Clifton Larson Allen audit. We already do the single audits. We pass all of those with flying colors. And any time in my history of being here in 10 years that we've ever found anything on an audit, we've rectified it extremely quickly. But so I have no concerns that anything like bad would be found. I actually believe that if the legislators who wrote that letter would have taken the time to come and ask us about all the safeguards that we have in place, they probably would have never sent the letter.
It's just, I think it comes back to perception. Like you said, the word audit, people automatically think, I think there was a comment made during public comment, the county not refusing to go through the audit process. Well, the county gets audited every year. It's for the public record, so everybody knows. We get audited every year, and it goes to the state, and the state certifies that. So we get audited. We don't have a choice to participate, not participating in anybody. Our CAFRs have to be certified every year. So we go through the process. As far as the letter, I wasn't even respond to that because that's all political in nature. If people really want to be transparent, I'd love to have that discussion in the future about why that was written, the purpose of that, because of contracts and political reasons. That's fine. I'm a very open person. I'd be happy to talk about it in the future.
So there's a lot there. That county commissioner, and I'm just going to say this, I don't care if I piss everybody off, it played out like a high school play. I think they all were saying exactly what they had to say, where they could say it, and Kevin Ruane made a point to make sure everybody knows that Kevin Carnes cuts their checks.
Well, look, I think there's no question about it that they're playing some word games in this hearing. And, you hear the word audit and people assume, well, it's being done by the book. The question is, how strong is the audit? See, this word audit is what's being thrown out. I say, well, we get audited. that doesn't mean you're getting the right kind of audit and the kind of audit that is best safeguards the money in Lee County. What you're telling me is in that meeting is, well, by the procedures that are there, we're doing what we're legally supposed to do. That doesn't mean you're doing it the best way possible. If this was a bar exam in the law, you would have just failed that question.
Well, and if you want to really break it down, you got Brian Hammond. And first off, he said, look, he said, I don't even know. We get audited. I welcome an audit. If they would ask us, they wouldn't never even wrote the letter in the beginning and all this. Brian Hammond is, yeah, I welcome the audit, but he's trying to tell you what you want to hear. It's no big deal. But then you got Cecil Pendergrass, and look, it's all political. You don't even respond. I don't even acknowledge it. So we got our county commissioners saying right there, don't even acknowledge our other legislators. They don't know what they're talking about. This is the game they play all along. Make the people think it's all BS. And is it political? Was that letter political? Yes, I agree with Cecil. That letter was every bit political.
And what I will say is the following. There's a lot of politics going around in Lee County, but remember, not all audits are the same, and the question is very simple. Are we doing the best kind of audit? Do we have the best internal procedures in place, as Kevin Carnes says, in terms of safeguarding Lee County's money? That jury's still out. I didn't hear any solutions there. All I heard was, well, we've always done it this way, so we're going to continue doing it this way. And that is why we're in the mess we're in.
Well, again, and I can really break it down for you. If Kevin Carnes or Brian Hammond or Pendergrass, him needs to know, if you want a specific area to look, let's just look at all the relief money. Do a forensic audit of the relief money, and I promise you, you won't be so nonchalantly said, oh, yeah, let's do an audit.
Well, you know, and I think that the forensic audit of the federal relief money would be a very, very good idea. Only how much money came into Lee County? Where did that money go specifically? And why did some people get it and other people didn't? This is still taxpayer dollars. It's just some taxpayer dollars from outside the state of Florida. And I think we should know, because, again, at the end of the day, if you can run around in Florida spending like abandoned with federal money, no wonder New York and California are doing that as well.
It's incredible to me. And through my research, I've seen where some of this relief money has went that I don't agree with. And I don't understand why more people ain't out saying, hey, what about this? What about this for the people that was displaced housing? What about this? People are not up in arms about this the way they should be. I guarantee you it's a big ticket item when somebody finds out what money has been misplaced.
Look, we have known this always through disasters, that they become a boondoggle for those who are willing to engage in self-dealing. This goes all the way back to Hurricane Katrina that wasn't even in our state of Florida. And, well, you know what I mean, the New Orleans part. And it was a giveaway. It was like, where do you go to? Why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money's at.
Yep. Again, I don't want to constantly be on top of our elected officials. All I want you to do is be honest and transparent. And if there's a question by anybody, I don't care who it is, what political affiliation or something that's going on within our local government, then we need to rectify that and give them an answer. And until y'all give me a forensic audit, y'all have not answered my questions.
And I think it's important, Joe, to raise these types of questions because we need to breed good governments. I'm not alleging that they've done anything wrong. What I am saying is let's look under the hood rather than just take their word for it.
Well, I want to go ahead and talking about the local politics. Everybody knows that I'm very active at what's going on within the school district. They had a couple of workshops that I can't go over all of them, but I will tell you that there was a bargaining agreement with the teachers union, and some stuff come out that the teachers didn't know before. And the same day they had a meeting or the next day, the local school board had a meeting about the salary for the elected superintendent. this is very questionable. I'm going to play this clip that I put together, and Armored Persons is pushing for top dollar, the most he can get. And I'm a conservative. Nothing in my conservative beliefs thinks that anybody who's representing our dollars or trying to be good stewards of our money should push for the maximum. I'll let you see this and see what you think.
No concern, and for the record, I'm not going to run for superintendent, that someone that is in the district and that is qualified would not want to take on the extra responsibility and run for this office and do the extra responsibility just so they could make $1 more than possibly they're making right now. I mean, it would just, if it's not an incentive, and I think we want people coming possibly from the, the district or education, even at 15%, that would be well below what the superintendent makes at this time. But I think it's enough above our highest employee that it'd be worth someone possibly looking into it. I think you may get candidates that are coming from a college area or something like this also. You just, professors and things in education. So I just want a nice field of candidates, and I just feel the job, in my opinion, justifies what that would bring. I think that would bring it somewhere around 230 as a starting salary, just from my calculations. Not exactly, but that's the general ballpark. And so I'm still leaning towards shall be a minimum of 15% above, and then we got discretionary from that point. But again, that's up to the board to do a consensus on that. Should we take a consensus of whether we stay at the 178 as the salary for someone to run, and everything above that will be discretionary after we see someone who's elected? I personally don't like that. I mean, it seems like we're saying if the right person gets elected, we'll give them more money, but if the wrong person gets elected, we won't give them more money. I think the position should be set for whoever runs, and then we have a discretionary beyond that. That's my consensus, but we'll just sort of go down, Mr. Fitz.
I'm comfortable with the 205, but I think the wording needs to be shall and then discretionary may.
Okay. Ms. Morgan, the one argument that was made was you'll get someone totally unqualified running for office. And I said this county is very good about selecting well-qualified people.
And that on a big BS from Armour. This county is not very selective on qualified candidates. We are only get the candidates that Terry Miller allows us to have. And why is Armour, a so-called conservative, pushing for the top pay of $230,000+ plus every time anybody gets a raise of 3% or whatever, everybody else, so does the superintendent. Look, why do you start out giving somebody everything and not making them earn it?
Well, you shouldn't do that. That's terrible bargaining. And if you're that bad at bargaining, even if it wasn't an elected position, how would you get them in there? And finally, he wants to pay the Lee County superintendent, an elected official, almost more money than the president of the United States. I want everyone to understand that. That is almost more money than the yearly salary of the president of the United States. And our schools are run into the ground. And the people that have run our schools into the ground are most likely going to be the elected official for the Lee County School Board.
But now here's the thing. That all being said, look, he's working awful hard to help pave the path to this elected superintendent. And later on in the day, he even had to be corrected because he was even arguing with the board's attorney. He doesn't understand. Once that position is an elected position, the board don't have no more say.
That's exactly right. And Who does it seem that is running for that position?
Well,
who is it that right now seems to be running for that position?
Clearly speculation, folks, and I will tell you this is what it seems to me. State Representative Lyle Spencer Rhodes has made a point to tell another school board member, and I have this directly from the source, he told school board member Melissa Giovanelli that he was not running for state representative to make sure everyone knew. Now, okay, so if he's not running for state representative, that ain't saying he ain't running for any office. He's not running for state representative. Here's another thing. Jenna Persons, who I told you had depleted her campaign accounts a while back, has been sending a lot of emails to the Lee County voters. And the past couple months, it's been rumored that she's going to run and for her state representative office and then pull out to endorse her good friend Stephanie Inc. Edwards. This is another plot by the cabal to keep control of Lee County, not for you, not for me, but for them. And
so
here's my belief.
Go ahead.
I think Spencer Roach is going to run for superintendent. I think that Spencer Roach wants to destroy the public school system as it is, or government schools as he calls it. I believe that in the end, it'll be a good swap up and you'll see Spencer Roach on the ticket.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. Regardless of who winds up winning all these positions, right now we've got Democrats rigging elections in the general election, and you've got Republicans in Lee County basically rigging elections in the primary. Think about what I just said. That is what is going on in Lee County. Oh, I'm just going to, do we live in a monarchy? And then we've got people picking other people and just gently giving them the seat, and other people priming salaries and other positions for other people. I mean, Lee County needs to wake up.
Well, and you know, on top of that, what I told you, that superintendent, the call for all this maximum money, there's one teacher who stands out. This young man has been going to the meetings, and he started going and he hasn't stopped, and he is very knowledgeable. And I'm going to play one last clip here of Robert Daniels, and this is a school teacher within the Lee County School District.
Robert Daniels, back again. I have in my hand here a public request document that is the salary schedule for every single employee in the district as of, what was it, August 2nd this year. And when I went through the Excel spreadsheet, found a couple interesting numbers. When I took it down to classroom teachers only, it was $266 million in salaries for just classroom teachers, no one else. For all instructional and support staff, it was $426 million. Administrative salaries came out to $400 million for 418 of them. I'm not sure if they were all in here. There were certain names I saw missing on the list that were either intentionally left out or for some reason not included. When I look at the budget with the revenues that are listed, itemized for instruction, there's money there that even at the bargain with requests made specifically of where is this money going, answers cannot be provided directly and forthwith. And the money, when I look at it with the math, with that $266 million in mind, is more than double that amount that's just out there in the wind. So there's enough money to double the teacher salaries. By what I'm looking at, that's just not accounted for. And when we ask for that money to be accounted for, a circle is danced around that question. Furthermore, it's stated plainly in the budget that the district revenues went up by almost 15%, but expenses only went up by 3.1%. The raises last year for the teachers amounted to just about 0.5% of the budget. Can we make those numbers square for myself and the other thousands of teachers that are batting in, you know, about $55,000 a year before taxes? I did have us funded at $8,300 per student, but the $8,900 is a new number. At those numbers, the first 7 students into each classroom pays for the teacher, complete with benefits. Where's the money from the other 23 students going? As most of us are looking at 30 students in an elementary classroom, and at least that many in a high school classroom. We previously endorsed a levy, the sales tax. The teachers endorsed that, and I understand that this is not this board. This is an inherited problem, but when we all rallied behind and helped get that levy for the sales tax pushed past the process, and there were few enough votes difference that we can say the teachers made the difference on that one. We were promised raises with the difference in the money. That never happened. We're still waiting for it. Where is that money before we talk about any more money for other things? Thank you.
Look, I have to commend this young man. He goes up there at the risk of his own job. I mean, he's a school teacher, and he's basically telling them what they don't want people to hear. The money's out there, but what are they doing with it?
Yeah, and I commend him for it as well. He's been in other clips when we've done the show together. You brought him up, and he's raising legitimate questions, and these legitimate questions should not continue to go unanswered.
There's just got to be something that satisfies every appetite. And currently, with the nepotism, the cronyism, there's nobody got a taste for that except for the cabal.
This is another problem. We've got legitimate questions that are being raised in Lee County schools. The cabal controls the school board, so no one's doing anything. People have got to know what is going on. And unfortunately, everyone in Lee County seems to be like an ostrich with its head in the sand.
I agree, Ford. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. I hope everybody will look into what's going on locally. There's a lot of things going on, not only in Lee County. There's some problems up in Sarasota County that I've been looking at, and there's issues within Collier County. Your local government is the most important issue that you should be faced with right now. And folks, please continue to watch our show, like, share, subscribe. Ford, I thank you for joining me today. I'm Smoking Joe, and we'll see you next time on Cracker Culture Podcast.